It's time for the Sports Blitz, the only live-streamed local sports show in Arkansas, with all the latest on the sports stories that matter to you.
Mark Freeman, Weldon Braxton, Maddie Lassiter in the Cogswell Motors studios on a Monday. We're here to talk about a number of things, probably most importantly to us and maybe to you. The San Antonio Spurs, five-time NBA champions, took down my Miami Heat in 5 games, 104-87 last night. I told you on Friday it was going to happen. I didn't even watch the game. I don't get to analyze Game 5 because I did not pay attention to it because I knew this crap was going to happen. Weldon, LeBron James, 31 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 blocks. Wasn't enough as Miami just got railroaded in the second and third quarters and won this game by San Antonio won this game by 17 points. It was an incredible season, an incredible finals to sort of make up for last year when they thought they blew it against the Heat and just gave it to them. It looks to me like they proved that they were right.
Well, I'm really disappointed in you, Mark. As an analyst on this show, you watch to the bitter end. You have an obligation to our fans out there, the dozens of them. Will become 1,000 and then millions before long. But, Mark, you're right. San Antonio deserves tremendous credit. Here's a team who they've been at the top of the NBA in some shape or form for, go back into the 90s, obviously win that championship in 1999. And they were competitive, the years before that as well. And so it's been one of the greatest runs we've seen, not necessarily with titles, but just being in the playoffs, being one of the better teams in the NBA for consecutive seasons. I mean, you got to go back to the Celtics of the 60s before you find something to rival this. Obviously, again, I know they won more championships, but you don't see that type of consistency in college or professional sports. In college, you do. The Dukes, the Carolinas, the Kansas, they're in there year in and year out. But in pro sports, with the salary cap, free agency, egos, guys getting old, you just don't see that very often. So you got to give San Antonio a lot of credit. Also look at the way they've done it. This championship is special to me because it's different than the previous 3. Here's a Spurs team that would hold you under 80 points, grind you, dump the ball down inside to the bigs, suffocate you on defense for those first 3 rings. This is a sleeker, more explosive, leaner offensive team, not quite the same on defense, but this sort of offensive way of doing things is different. And you could question it because there were times where, they just can't get past Oklahoma City. They just can't get past Miami. They're just too old. But you got to understand, this more sleek San Antonio offensive team has finally won a championship. And I think that's great for those guys.
What I respect most about this team is that they were the better team. We said going into the series that we thought San Antonio was the better team, but I picked Miami to win the series in 6 games because I thought they were close enough to even that LeBron would take the Heat over the top. LeBron James had a pretty good series. There was one game where it was just kind of like, what in the world are you doing? And every other game, he carried the team and nobody else came with him. San Antonio, you got to give them all the credit for that ability. They just shot the ball incredibly well. They played a very unselfish game of basketball. Weldon's going to mention here in a little bit about how he doesn't think that this is going to be copycatted in a copycat league, but the point that I want to make is that watching the Spurs play, and I said this early on in the playoffs, the way that they play, man, I don't like the Spurs. I never liked Manu Ginobili. Couldn't stand him. Just the way he flopped around, the way he was just, I don't know. I just didn't like him all the way back to when he actually had hair, when he had that long hair back in the day. Didn't really care for Tony Parker. Loved Tim Duncan, always did. But the way that those guys sacrifice for one another, you want to talk about the Heat bringing the big 3 together and them sacrificing some money to play together. If you can tell me that Tim Duncan in his last couple contracts is only worth $10 million a year, when guys like Rudy Gay are making $20 million a year, in these crappy, stupid contracts they sign, they've sacrificed so much, not only on the court but off the court with the finances and making less money. Then they get on the court and they're unselfish as can be. They're passing the ball around to get the best shot. San Antonio has very, very much impressed me, and it sort of, in my opinion, it closed the door on the Heat winning a championship built the way they are. They're going to have to change so much about the way that they. And, I said that the Heat were the best, that the only team in the league that could beat them was the Spurs. I don't see anything really changing with that unless Tim Duncan retires. The Spurs will be right back next year, and if the Heat expect to win a championship, they're going to have to retool.
And that's the problem, and that's why I opened up giving San Antonio the credit, because ultimately I think you have to look at Miami more so in this series, not because they lost it, but the way in which they lost it. You had a 6-game series, I had a 7-game series. There was every reason to believe that it would at least go that distance, and it flat out didn't. And really, you could even almost say it was a gentleman's sweep, considering the way San Antonio had chances in Game 2. So you look at Miami, and these role players have been erratic really throughout the duration of the Big Three. You go back to the Joel Anthony, Mike Bibby days, and obviously now more so with Cole and Chalmers and in this group. They're just erratic. This same Miami Heat group has shown the capability of playing beautiful drive and kick basketball, kicking it out to the Battiers and the Ray Allens for wide open threes. LeBron and Wade inside, more so LeBron, and just the role players hitting shots and doing things, and they just didn't do it. And Miami's gotten to 4 straight finals. I think they've done well for themselves to win 2 of them because they don't have a solid group of role players. I still say that from a capability standpoint, they were capable of doing more, but at the same time, you just didn't know what you were going to get. So to go 2 out of 4, I think is on par for a group that's inconsistent around star players. And obviously, Dwayne Wade is the elephant in the room, and we're going to address him here coming up.
We definitely will. We'll talk about Dwayne Wade here in a minute, but to avoid further burying the lead, the San Antonio Spurs won the NBA Finals. Kawhi Leonard was named your MVP. 6 years after his father was murdered on Father's Day, he gets the MVP on Father's Day. What a story for a guy like Kawhi Leonard, who's a quiet star. And, I was talking with some guys yesterday, and they said, man, you can't tell me that he's as good as he's playing in this series. He's not a top 10 player. Well, there are times when people just show up on the big stage and, all right, it's my time. I'm here and I ain't going anywhere.
Yeah.
I feel like that could be Kawhi Leonard because now that he's got the confidence that, look, we just beat LeBron James in large part because I was as good on offense and defense as he was. I know the stats were very similar, and LeBron James is LeBron James. There's no taking away from him. But Kawhi Leonard just absolutely dominated in this series. He had 22 and 10, like I said, in the closeout game. I'm trying to find his stats for the series, but they were very impressive. Here it was. 17.8 points per game. He shot 61% from the field.
Yeah, and look, who would have thought after the first 2 games Kawhi Leonard would be the MVP of the finals? Kawhi Leonard was bad. I took up for him before the series, and I had a hard time defending him after the first 2 games because I kept hearing people say going in and then after the first 2, well, Kawhi can't be what he was last year in the finals. He had a great finals. That's going to even itself out. And I kept thinking, first of all, his regular season numbers were pretty much aligned with what he did in last year's finals. So that speaks to his consistency as far as I'm concerned. And he had a couple of bad games. But look, Kawhi Leonard is a really good player. Understand where he's coming from. He played more of a small type power forward at San Diego State. So he's still learning how to play more out on the floor. You can kind of see it in his ball handling. He's got to clean that up. But in terms of just his length, his huge hands, his athleticism, and his humble mentality and the way he's hungry, he's got everything he needs to be a really good player in this league. I can't say where he would rank as far as players right now, but he is on his way to being really good, deserving of the Finals MVP because of the difficulties he provided on LeBron James as well as making some shots on offense. So I think it's really good that you're seeing a young guy mix in with this sort of older Spurs mentality to let you know they have some youth mixed in too.
We're going to talk a little bit deeper about this series here in a little bit. I'm hoping to have a coach friend call in to talk about the coaching matchup that took place, and he's one that really believes that Greg Popovich absolutely outcoached Eric Spoelstra in this series. And I can see his position, but I can kind of go the other way as well. Not that Spoelstra outcoached Pop, but that there were inherent disadvantages there for him. But I want to look at what both teams have to do to continue going in this direction. For the Heat, they're going to have to change some things. The Spurs, they may lose Tim Duncan. I think that the players in the next month or so are going to be doing their best to, all right, get off your feet and, come talk to us in a little bit, and we'll be in your ear about how you need to come back for one more run. It'd be very hard for me if I was Tim Duncan to come back next year, knowing I left on the white horse as the NBA champ.
Yeah, the way he sounded, he kind of leaned like he didn't say he was coming back, but he kind of sounded like he was leaning that way. We'll see what he says coming up here. But I think you touched on it before the show. They would have an opportunity to come back and do it again. And I hate when we say that, because it seems like every time a team wins a championship, we say, oh, they're in line to do it again. But when you look at the landscape of the NBA and how usually teams in the NBA are pretty consistent as far as being at the top and staying at the top. It's not like the NFL where you can go to the Super Bowl and then miss the playoffs the next year, something like that. So, but when you look at the way these teams have to be built, Mark, I have my 5 ways of building a team. And I've talked about this before. There's the old Celtic model where you just big across the board. You remember even DJ at point guard was a big guard. He was a former 2 guard, played point when he went to Boston. Obviously the Lakers, having that dynamic, big, versatile point guard with a bunch of guys that can run around them. The Pistons, that 5-man Rough Rider type build. Chicago, dynamic wings. Don't have to have a point guard necessarily, but a guy that can defend and shoot, and obviously a little bit of help inside. And then I think the Spurs model is a little bit different way. It's still a team, but unlike the Detroit model, it's more of a fluid 5-man team mode. So I think those are the general templates to build a team. So when you look at Miami, I think they need to pick one and go with it.
Maddie, let's take our first break just a couple minutes early. It's a natural pause here because we've got some other things to talk about. The U.S. Open, a couple of people passed away over the weekend that we want to give a couple minutes to, and also the World Cup. Yeah, we're going to talk soccer and golf. This is going to happen. There's plenty more on the Sports Blitz. Stay with us.
Hi folks, Richard Roberts with Cogswell Motors in Russellville. We've been in business since 1949. A dealership doesn't stay in business that long under the same ownership unless you're doing something right, and that's taking care of customers. We have the largest selection of new Ford, Lincoln, Mazda, and pre-owned vehicles in the River Valley. So if you want the most for your trade, the best interest rate on financing, and the best price on a new or pre-owned automobile, come to Russellville and see us. We're at 1900 East Main, or visit us on the web at cogswellmotors.com.
If you didn't count on KARK4 today this morning,
here's what you missed.
Updated news.
Police continue searching for suspects after a home intrusion overnight.
Developing stories.
It's another piece of presidential history turning up here in Arkansas.
And weather and traffic on the force.
Friday night, Saturday morning will bring us our next chance of rain.
Every 10 minutes.
Around the clock.
Making your day easier.
So rise and shine and count on.
Count on.
Count on. KARK4 today.
RiverValleyLeader.com is the #1 local source for instant news in the River Valley, offering HD video and live streaming along with top-notch coverage of all the news and events around the area. The River Valley Leader is the only place to go for all the information you need. Check out the newest local business featured on the site, as well as police news and coverage from important meetings, along with the personal stories, all at one convenient click. Check out RiverValleyLeader.com.
Today, there are more than 20 brands of cars being sold in America. So to be noticed, Ford and Cogswell Motors have to go further than anyone thought we could. How does Ford stand out above the crowd? Not just with plug-in vehicles like the new 2013 Ford Fusion Energy that gets a projected 100 miles per gallon equivalent, but also with a line of gas vehicles equipped with the innovative EcoBoost engines combining power and efficiency, plus a full measure of technologically advanced features. We invite you to stop into Cogswell Motors today. We go further than anyone thought we could, so that you can go further too.
Welcome back to the Sports Blitz on a Monday. Mark Freeman, Weldon Braxton, Maddie Lassiter here in the Cogswell Motors studios, bringing you the latest in local, state, and national sports. Not a whole lot going on locally, obviously. School's out, so we got 7-on-7 camps and individuals camps and team camps going on, and we'll try to get some pictures and things like that from some of these camps to share at rivervalleyleader.com through the summer. We're talking in the break about how this enters the twilight zone of summer where there's nothing going on in sports and it's just kind of boring. So I asked today's CrossFit Russellville poll question: what sports are you going to pay attention to through the summer until college football kicks off and really starts heating up? And I'll find it interesting to see what people will have to say about that. We'll talk a little bit about the Razorbacks here in a little bit, but I want to get to some wire topics before we get back into the NBA after the next break and break down the finals a little bit more. Tony Gwynn today passed away at age 54. Chuck Noll over the weekend at age 82. A couple of big losses in the world of sports. It doesn't happen often, Weldon, where I see a headline and I'm like, oh my gosh. But Tony Gwynn passing away this morning, that was kind of a shock. We knew he was battling cancer, but that's kind of a rough thing for it to have happened so fast. I guess his family and whatnot kept it really quiet so that it wouldn't be a big topic of discussion.
Yeah, I think so. From what I've heard and read, it looks like he had been hospitalized again. We weren't made aware of it, but I think he was working with San Diego State as far as keeping them in context. Obviously, that's where he was coaching and trying to keep that to where he could work around his schedule. And it is unfortunate loss. You're talking about one of the better hitters we've ever seen, especially getting on base hits, batting average. Tony Gwynn's a tremendous loss. Obviously, we saw him quite a bit in the coaching world when he had Steven Strasburg and San Diego State was sort of on the forefront. But of course, going back to his times with the Padres, he's kind of Mr. Padre with that organization. And so it's a huge loss for baseball. Baseball is a very close-knit sport in terms of holding history sacred and preserving the past. They're really big into that, and so there's no question this is going to really hit the baseball family. I expect to hear reaction and comments throughout the coming days.
Oh, you definitely will. And then on the football side, former Steelers head coach Chuck Noll won 4 Super Bowls, and he won back-to-back 2 different times with a couple years in between. 4 Super Bowl championships for one coach is unheard of in this day and age. I mean, you got Bill Belichick, who's got 3 right now, and everybody has talked about his deity. He's just some held-up figure. Well, Chuck Noll was that before Bill Belichick ever thought about being that, and he was obviously one of the heavyweights in NFL history, and he passed away at age 82 over the weekend.
Yeah, Chuck Noll is one of my favorite coaches of all time. Just when you look at defensively, the mind he was and the philosophy that he had as a defense, even going back to before he was with the Steelers when he was a defensive coordinator, and obviously winning the Super Bowls. We always talk about the Steel Curtain. We talk about the great players they had. Chuck Noll's always been underrated to me. You kind of touched on it with the Bill Belichick. We talk about Vince Lombardi, Bill Walsh, and they're all deserving to be talked about. But Chuck Noll belongs in that group. The Steelers are the Steelers in large part because of what they were able to do during his time as the head coach. So he will be sorely missed, and he's one of my favorites.
He was very, very good. And I've got some Steeler fan friends, who they're kind of dealing with a loss right now, so it's a tough time for them, and we'll wish the families and friends and fans the best as they mourn the loss of those Chuck Noll and Tony Gwynn, dead at 82 and 54 respectively. Moving on, I don't know that we mentioned this on Friday, but the Los Angeles Kings won the second Stanley Cup in 3 years. Oh, it did happen on Friday. Okay, see, I thought it happened on Thursday, and we didn't mention it on Friday. So it happened on Friday, and we weren't here, obviously, because we'd already done the show. The Stanley Cup is over, and for the second time in 3 years, the Los Angeles Kings are lifting it themselves here. I'm trying to think of they won it in 5 games against the New York Rangers, and I wish that I had the dude's name who won the Conn Smythe Trophy. Obviously, I don't care because it's hockey, but we give them their time. Like I said, we've entered the twilight zone of sports talk to where we have to talk about things like hockey, but congratulations to the Los Angeles Kings.
Well, I hate to keep bringing this up, but a couple of weeks ago when you and the Sheriff, I told you about Jonathan Quick. When they were in the Western Conference Finals trying to get rid of the Blackhawks, I told you my man Quick is going going to pull us out. Look, you watched the Winter Olympics, as I did, because I was in Minnesota at the time, and you're up there, you don't really have a choice. You're in February. That's what the Winter Olympics
You're
is on.
living in them, huh?
That's what they're watching. So I got to watch Quick be the goaltender for Team USA. And from what I understand, he didn't have the greatest regular season, but I always knew my man Quick was going to pull through for me. That's why he's got him a Stanley Cup trophy.
Congratulations. Also, another trophy winner this weekend, Martin Keimer, wins the U.S. Open by 8 strokes, just wire-to-wire winner.
Yes.
Was way ahead of the field going into Sunday. Nobody was able to close the gap. I did listen on the radio as I went to play ball last night. So as I was driving back from playing ball, I heard that his lead had shrunk quite a bit. And obviously, since I don't care about golf, I didn't just sit there and listen to it. But he stretched it back out and was able to win the U.S. Open there at Pinehurst #2. Very impressive for guys like me who don't care at all about golf, for a guy to win a major tournament by 8 strokes.
Yeah, it reminds you of kind of what Rory McIlroy did a couple of years ago. Obviously, you go into Tiger and some of his dominant performances. Yeah. But, Martin Keimer, he's been the #1 player in the world, so it's not like this is one of those fluke things. We see sometimes no names go up and win tournaments. He's not playing the way he was when he was the #1 player a couple of years ago, but he's still really good. And, to go 9 under on the U.S. Open golf course, it didn't have U.S. Open rough like I typically like, but it did have some strange terrain, sand and grass type that made it difficult for the players. Again, second place was 1 under, so Martin Keimer wins this by 8 strokes. I thought the golf course played tough like I like for a U.S. Open to play, but Keimer was really good. I thought he got a birdie early. He gave it back a little bit, but I thought getting an early birdie in the 4th round really helped him out, get his confidence going. As you try to close out a major, there are some nerves. So, again, when we talk about golf, it's not what it is without Tiger Woods. The interest is not there. People wanted to follow Phil Mickelson. He kind of fell off the pace. He tried to hold on, but he ended up falling off the pace. I think he finished 7 over. So, it's a good win for Keimer. Ricky Fowler on the American front, Keegan Bradley. Keegan Bradley had a good 4th round. I watched a little bit of that. He closed well, but it was all about the German, Mr. Keimer.
Reading a couple notes here. He had the second lowest 72-hole score in U.S. Open history, behind Rory McIlroy's 268 he shot at Congressional in 2011. Yeah. Tiger Woods, like he did to so many different people at like the Masters. Where was it that he just ran off and hid? I know he did it once.
I think
the
at
Masters.
Pebble. I think the U.S. Open at Pebble, either 2000, 2001. I think he ran away with it at Pebble Beach.
Okay, well, this one here has him shooting a 272 in 2003 at Pebble Beach.
Okay, yeah.
I didn't know if that was the major that he just absolutely crushed people in. I guess that was the one. Who we got over there? We got Garrett. Say Garrett. Awesome. All right, we'll switch gears and we'll talk some more of the.
No, we won't.
No, we probably won't. More of the not golf, but more of the wire related stuff here in a little bit. We're gonna switch gears back to the NBA Finals for just a little bit. We talked. Jason just texted me a minute ago, and he was talking about how he said somebody has taken over you guys' show because you guys are giving the Spurs credit. Man, we had to give them credit where it was due. They absolutely dominated the Miami Heat in this series, and we've talked about every reason under the sun. We'll talk about some more here in a little bit, but we're joined right now on the line by Pottsville head junior high and assistant high school coach Garrett Hill, who I wanted him to give us a little bit of a coach's perspective on the way this series went, because I talked with him last night about the series, and Greg Popovich obviously coached a very, very good series. Eric Spoelstra, although he's won 2 championships in a row, he doesn't get, in my opinion, some of the credit that he deserves for dealing with the team and the superstars the way he has. But it goes without saying that Greg Popovich outcoached him in this series. Garrett, I wanted to get your opinion on the series and a little bit about what you thought about the coaching that went on, the stuff that some of us wouldn't normally pay attention to or see.
It's hard to question an NBA coach because they're coaching the NBA. So, but obviously Popovich is probably the best there is, maybe in all of basketball. So he just did a good job of putting his players in good positions to score, doing what they're good at. I mean, he wasn't asking Tony Parker to have to hit threes. He set a lot of ball screens, that kind of thing. The Heat started switching all the ball screens, and so they'd switch it, and Tony Parker would pull it back out, and then they'd kind of flatten out, and he'd take a be able to take a post to the rim. And Kawhi Leonard, same thing. He talked about last night after the game about how they just kept telling him to be aggressive, be aggressive, be aggressive. He really created a lot of offense for everyone else, not in him averaging, 17 or 18 points a game in the final. The Heat, I don't know. Spoelstra, like you said, he's done a great job of managing the different superstars, the different personalities, because he's let them kind of do what they're good at. But I don't know. I mean, Dwayne Wade is not the flash like he used to be. He can't just blow by people and finish at the rim like he used to. And I think they didn't do a very good job of running any sets. They basically relied on those big three to just go score, and that kind of came back to bite him against a good defensive team.
Well, one thing I do want to get to, Garrett, that's a good point. Well, the three people for the Heat who shot double-digit shots last night, guess who they were? It was just the big three. Chris Bosh, Dwayne Wade, and LeBron James, the only three guys who shot double-digit times. And then you go look at the Spurs; they have 5 guys in double figures: 22, 19, 17, 16, 14. They just have guys all over the place who can get it done.
Yeah, and Coach Hill, glad to see you as well in there. How you doing?
Good, man. How are you?
Oh, I couldn't be better. I want to get your take on something that I've really said going back to the inception of the Big Three. They like each other and they're really talented, so they won a couple of championships. But I still don't believe, and really it's more so LeBron and Dwayne Wade, that they don't always play well off each other. It seems like they like to take turns, one on each side of the floor, or Wade won't take over unless LeBron's on the bench. What do you think about how they play together as players, how their games fit, and how you don't see a lot of two-man basketball, same side action with LeBron and Dwayne Wade?
Right. I agree. Both of them are used to being the guy, and being the best player on their team, especially once they first came together. And that's why it kind of took a year or two for them to get to be able to win that championship. But I think it kind of goes back to what they run on offense. I mean, they run a lot of isolation plays where, hey, we're going to clear out this one side of the floor for Dwayne Wade, or we're going to clear out a middle drive for LeBron James. I mean, even if you go back and watch the tape last night, I mean, most of Chris Bosh's points, he was catching it outside the three-point line and taking 2 or 3 dribbles and having to drive in and score. And that's not what he's good at. I mean, he's a mid-range screen and either screen and roll or screen and pop, 10 or 12-foot jump shot kind of player. He should never have to put the ball on the floor to score. And that just seemed like that was the game plan. And when they couldn't get in the lane, when when Wade and LeBron couldn't get to the rim, and they really, really struggled to score. Right at the start of the second half last night, I think they were down 7 at halftime, and the Heat put together 5 or 6 stops in a row, but then they went down the other end and never scored. I mean, they had great opportunities to build some momentum and maybe even take the lead, while the Spurs were not scoring, and they just couldn't score.
You and I have talked about this at great length several different times, but it goes without saying that the Heat are going to have to change some things if they hope to win, because it's too hard for them as currently constructed to win. I mean, it takes so much out of just the big three to be able to compete, let alone to win. They're going to have to do some things philosophically and roster-wise to win another championship. You and I both sort of agree on some of the things that they need to do. One of them, obviously, getting another point guard. What do the Miami Heat have to do to get back and win another NBA Finals?
Well,
say it. Go ahead and say it. I know you want to.
Huh?
I know you want to. Go ahead and say it.
Obviously, Mario Chalmers is a free agent. They need to just. I mean, it's going to cost too much to re-sign him in the first place, just because he's a NBA championship point guard. Not that he contributed a whole lot to that, but they just need to let him go. I mean, it will cost them too much to re-sign him. This year's draft class is so deep and talented. They can find somebody. I really like North Cole. I think he will be. He's for sure a better shooter than Chalmers. He kind of fits that role that the Heat need. They need a pass first point guard more so than they need someone like what Chalmers did, and where he was kind of looking to score. He wasn't a great creator. And then obviously they need a center. I don't know if Greg Oden is ever going to be able to work out. I think it's probably, he's cheap enough right now. I think it's probably worth giving him a chance to get healthy. I mean, he's had his entire year. And then I honestly think Michael Beasley should have been playing more. I know I told you this last night. He's not a great, obviously he's not the best person, but when LeBron is out, or when Wade is out, or when Bosh is out, he's someone that can score in that second group. So I think he deserves a chance to give himself a spot in the rotation. So those three, but then they really need to address the point guard, a backup point guard type, or if they can get someone better than Cole than a starter. And they definitely need a center. Bosh is not a center, and it's now that the Heat are getting older and they can't just blow by people and run up and down the floor and outrun people with that smaller lineup, they have to get a center where they can play inside now.
Yeah, Garrett, I agree on the draft. I mean, you look at the bottom, obviously, Miami. Even at the bottom of the draft, you can get a Jordan Clarkson. We saw him in the SEC. Samaj Christian, another very good player. But we got to know Matty wants Marshall Henderson, who continues to make dumb comment after dumb comment. But that's for another show. But Garrett, talking to Mark, he tells me you're a huge D Wade fan. We got to look at him here. Obviously, he looked a little bit hobbled. He didn't look like the same D Wade. I've said, for one thing, it'll help him, and I'll ask if you agree, if he leaned up a little bit. Doesn't have a lot of fat, but he just seems a little bit more bulky. I figure if he could drop about 10 pounds, that would help the knee issues and what have you. But in addition to that, what do you see from Dwayne Wade moving forward, his contributions, what type of player he can be moving forward?
Well, some people like Mark thinks that they may need to just let him go, and that's one way of going about it. But I think if they just cut ties and get rid of any of the big three, then it's still going to be 2 or 3 more years before they can get back to a finals. And I mean, who's to say LeBron's going to stick around for that long? So I don't think getting rid of him is the option. I mean, obviously Dwayne Wade, you said get in better shape, lose some weight. That would definitely help. He has got to develop more of a outside game. I mean, he's got to be able to hit a 12, 15-foot jump shot. He's got to be able to hit a wide open three, because he's just not the same explosive blow-by player that he was. I mean, Michael Jordan, Mark mentioned that last night, Michael Jordan took his game and changed it once he started getting older and when he couldn't just run and jump over people. So he's got to change his game a little bit. He's not the same flash, explosive player that he used to be, where he can just get to the lane, get to the free throw line, and finish around the rim. He's got to be able to have some type of outside game now.
Now, to sort of clarify, I don't mean that they need to cut ties totally with Dwayne Wade, but I just don't think that right now, as he currently is, he set out a quarter of the season. You do this maintenance plan to get a guy. He's a max player. He's sitting out a quarter of the year, and he's making max money. You can't pay a guy that much to play 3/4 of the season when LeBron and Chris Bosh are making the same thing, and they're playing every game. It's just, to me, if he won't take more of a pay cut. I don't want them to go after Carmelo Anthony. I think that'd be one of the dumbest things ever. But, we couldn't stop anybody, so let's go sign Carmelo Anthony.
Because he can stop somebody.
Because then we'll lose 121-120 instead of 120-85. We've got to, if you're Miami, you've got to figure out a way that you can put more talent on this team. The only way that you can do it is for these guys to sacrifice some. I think if anybody's going to sacrifice, Dwayne Wade, he's done a lot of sacrificing in his career. He's going to have to do it some more. I'm looking at his numbers, and you guys know I like to look at the numbers.
We know.
For his career, 24 points, 6 assists, 5 rebounds. This year, 19 points, 4.5 assists, 4.5 rebounds. He's not fallen off that far. And like we've talked about before coming into this series, each series of the playoffs, he did better. He did more. He put more effort in, more numbers up. I think he can still play at a high level, but you can't consistently rely on him to be that number 2. And the point, Garrett, that you just made, I think is a very good one. I think he's going to have to do this. If it's fair to talk about LeBron James growing, through his career and how you've got to get better at the jump shot, you've got to get better in the post, you've got to change this about your game, and you've got to change that to be a champ, and then him do it. At this point in Dwayne Wade's career at age 32, to know he can't fly by people anymore, and he's going to have to figure out how to shoot a jump shot at a higher percentage, which he was a 50+% shooter this year. They were all some of the most efficient players in the league. I think it's very fair to say, Weldon and Garrett, that you're going to have to shoot the ball at a better clip. You're going to have to get to be a better three-point shooter, which he did. I'll have to give him, in fairness, in the Pacers series, he shot the ball from 3 better than he had all year. He's going to have to consistently shoot the ball and keep the court spread out, because he can't just fly by people anymore.
Well, I agree with you guys on that. And when we look at this Miami team, Garrett, we also talk about the role players. And I feel like over the last few years, they've gotten away with the role players being inconsistent. This year, they didn't quite get away with it. So obviously, when you have a big 3, the salary cap becomes an issue. I feel like they need guys who, yes, they can shoot the ball, but they can offer at least something else, something on the defensive end. Rashard Lewis, Ray Allen, even a James Jones when they use him, Mike Miller when they had him, although Mike Miller was very good in Memphis. A lot of these guys are spot-up guys and are not much more defensively or creating off the dribble. Garrett, what do you think about the Heat's role players?
Yeah, their role players were not very good. Ray Allen played great last year during the finals, during the series, and that really gave him a big boost, him hitting outside shots. Shane Battier, who I still don't know why he didn't play more this year, but he brought more than just, he was able to hit some outside shots, but he could guard. And this year it was all LeBron was having to guard the other team's best players, or Dwayne Wade was having to guard the other team's best player, and then having to go down and try and do a lot on offense too. Last year, Battier played great defense. Udonis Haslem even came in and did a pretty good job guarding last year, and of course Birdman and those guys. But yeah, you're exactly right. Their role players just did not do much. Chalmers was awful. Ray Allen did not shoot it like he normally does, didn't score like he normally does, and they didn't have they didn't have a defensive stopper where they could give LeBron a break off guarding somebody, or give Dwayne Wade a break off guarding somebody. And to kind of go back to what we were just talking about a second ago about changing their game, changing the way they play. Tim Duncan, when they interviewed him last night, was talking about how was giving Popovich credit about how he changed their team and how the way they played with how the times have changed, and that's something that kind of goes back into Spoelstra too. They're going to have to run more sets. They're going to have to screens and try and get the kind of shots that they want, instead of just relying on LeBron to blow by somebody or Wade to blow by somebody. He's got to do a better job of putting the players in position to score and do what they're good at, and instead of just relying on pure athleticism.
Well, it'd be nice to see some sets run by Miami to where LeBron, it isn't just pat the rock for 20 seconds and then launch one up, or just, okay, well, let's see, we're going to spread it out 1-4 low or whatever, and just go to the basket, do what you do, get fouled, because it'd be nice to see somebody set a freaking ball screen every once in a while and let him go off of the screen or do something a little bit creative.
Yeah, and I want to get both of you guys' take on this. Mark, we touched on at the end of last Friday's show about LeBron James and the fact that sometimes it's difficult playing with him because you see him do so many different things. You get complacent, you get comfortable, you quit being aggressive. I think that's why, in Cleveland we said, oh, it's just, the teammates are real bad. There's not even a Wade or a Bosh. And then we see in Miami there at least is a Wade or a Bosh, but the workload still reduces down to Dwayne Wade. Do you guys want to see LeBron not eliminate his versatility, but kind of settle into a more definitive role, therefore it's easier to build and put guys around? Or what do you guys see LeBron James as far as his position, Garrett? And I'll ask you first.
He's so versatile. He can play basically 4 out of 5 positions. Any position but center. And that's never going to be a bad thing. So, I've talked to Mark about this before. He's just got to be the same type of aggressive all the time. Like, sometimes he's a passer, sometimes he's trying to score, sometimes he's doing this, sometimes he's doing that, and I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like if he's going off for 30 and everybody stands back watching, then he has to go off for 30 or 35 for them to win. Okay, the next game he will stand around and he's trying to be the distributor. He's trying to pass. He's trying to find the open man, make the right read, which is also great. But it's like his mentality changes from game to game, and he's got to be, especially for this year's team, he had to be that guy. He had to score for them to beat, especially the Spurs. Okay, and he didn't always do that. He would, like I've told Mark this before, he would go multiple minutes at a time without even taking a shot. And for the best player in the world, in my opinion, he's by far the best player in the world. And for the best player in the world, be the best player on your team's struggling, you're down by 15 points most every one of those games they lost, and you don't even look to take a shot. That's just uncalled for. He's got to look over. And the one game they won, what did LeBron do? He's coming down, hitting pull-up jumpers, making them guarding, making them having to start guarding with two people, and then that's when other people got open. That's when Wade got backdoor layups and Bosh got 12 wide open 12-foot, 15-foot jumpers. So he's just got to be more consistent with his aggressiveness.
You know, one thing, and I've been an excuse maker for LeBron. I've been the very definition of an apologist for LeBron in the past. One thing that does drive me crazy, and we've sat and watched games before, and I've thought the same thing you have about how, dude, you're standing in the corner, stop doing that, or you're going multiple. He went almost 2 quarters in the middle of a game, a couple games back, where he's just passing the ball all over the place. He doesn't even take a freaking shot. He takes a layup here and there, but he doesn't take a shot. That drives me nuts. I made the point on Friday, and I don't mean this to sound like an excuse, I really don't, that sometimes his versatility, as Weldon pointed out, kind of he uses that against himself in the fact that, okay, well, I've got this team built around me. That this team in here, okay, we got Ray Allen and Shane Battier and Chris Bosh. We've got shooters around me. I'm going to get the ball to the shooters. And then this team, we've got Mario Chalmers or Norris Cole and some of these guys who aren't necessarily built to score. I'm going to go to the basket and I'm going to score. Sometimes the fact that he can play 4 positions, he uses it against himself. When I would like to see them build the team around him as such that this is your defined role. We're going to ask you to be point forward, or we're going to ask you to be our absolute driving force offensively, and anything else that comes from that, I don't care if you average 8 assists a game. You can get me your 4 or 5 a game, and you get me 25 points a game, 30 points a game, whatever it is, and that's what you do. I think that might take a little bit of pressure off LeBron rather than have to be like, oh, well, I'm all things to all people in this game. I'm going to have to try to pass the ball in this quarter and score in this quarter. I think that to me, that would drive me nuts. I would rather have a defined role.
And I'll add this, and you guys can take it how you want. You look at LeBron, and when people get frustrated with him, I think you would even agree, it's just his talent level from a physical standpoint doesn't match up with how he's wired. Like we didn't get mad at Magic Johnson for not shooting, did we? Because we knew Magic Johnson wasn't an athletic freak or dynamic shooter or scorer. So when Magic Johnson would be passive as a scorer, we were kind of like, okay, that's Magic. He's gonna get his 19 points, 13 assists. But with LeBron, we're like, this dude can do X, Y, and Z. What is he doing dishing the rock and letting other people do it? He needs to do it because we've seen his talents. But again, I don't think he's wired like Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant to just go put the ball in the hole and tell everybody else to go sit down. And I think that conflict in the mind of fans and people watching him is kind of unsettling.
Yeah, but at the same time, that's what, when you're trying to, and I've never been the one to say he's LeBron, he's Michael Jordan, he's not the same player. They're not even close to the same type of player. When people are comparing you and putting you on that same pedestal, they want you to do the same things that other guys have done. So, Garrett, we can let you have your go on this, but I know you and I both talked about this before. He's not Michael Jordan. He's not the same type of player, and I don't think that it's fair to really even compare the two that way.
Right. He's definitely a different type of player. He's a more physical player. Michael was more finesse. Definitely had more of a mid-range game. Obviously, the fadeaway was unbelievable, and that's kind of what made him Michael Jordan once he got a little bit older. And I think it's crazy to think that LeBron doesn't know he has to score for the Heat to win. And I know he thinks he has to do this and this and this and this. But the reality is, especially when Wade wasn't playing well, when Bosch wasn't playing well, he has to score for them to win. And that's just, it's crazy. It's crazy to think that he didn't know that, or that other guys weren't saying, hey, like the Spurs were saying to Kawhi, hey, you got to be aggressive, you got to go score. But it's hard to put any knocks on LeBron because he is the best player in the world, and he did not have much help in this series. He did not have much help at all. No one else really came to play, and he tried. He did his absolute best to try and get other people involved and get other people going, and they just didn't take advantage of it, honestly. And then that's when LeBron's got to say, hey, I've got to be more aggressive. I've got to get to the free throw line. I've got to make more than one person guard me and get them even easier shots, I guess. But no, he's fine. The Heat are going to be all right. They're going to be back. But the Spurs just outplayed them. They outcoached them. They outplayed them. They were a better all-around team. Their role players is what really won. The role players and the coaching is what really won the series for the Spurs, because that second group for the Spurs, like Patty Mills and even Splitter and Diaw played huge minutes for the Spurs. So that's what really got the Heat beat in the end.
Well, this is a bow on the NBA season. I like the NBA, and I know a lot of folks they get a little weary of it. But this is like we said, this is the time where there ain't much else going on in the world of sports after the NBA. So we have to revel in it.
What do you people want to talk about? Do you want to talk about the World Cup, the baseball? The middle of baseball season. Look, I like baseball too, but it's June. Come on now. What do you want to talk about? I'm not apologizing, Mark. We're talking about the NBA. Great series. Great season just ended. That's what we're talking about.
That is. And Garrett, before we get you out of here, we talked about. I said this on Friday. I was just joking about it because I remember you telling me that you guys were playing in the Dunbar League and you're going to get to play against Joe Johnson's team. Now, don't tell us all the details, but I'm just going to go ahead and say that they beat them by 18 points. Don't tell everybody, Garrett, that Joe Johnson didn't show up, but you guys beat Joe Johnson's team in the Dunbar League. How's that going?
It's fun. It's good to get out there with like a real basketball atmosphere, real game-like atmosphere, and there's some really good competition up there. There's really good teams. I think just to be in the league, your team has to have at least 3 ex-college players on your team. So it's fun. I'm playing a lot of the guys that I played with when I was a kid are on the team. So it's a lot of fun.
Well, that sounds like
and obviously getting to play against somebody like Joe Johnson is just kind of bonus. Something that's really cool.
Yeah, I made the joke that, man, how cool would it be if Joe Johnson's guarding somebody else and you just go nuts for a couple quarters and you just hit a couple 3 threes in a row and he's like, all right, I gotta guard him now. You say, well, I caused Joe Johnson.
That'd be pretty cool.
And take him too.
I doubt with the other people that I have on my team that he's ever going to be guarding me, but it could happen, I guess.
Oh Lord! All right, man. We appreciate you giving us a call. We'll be talking with you about some local high school basketball, maybe some college and NBA from here on out throughout the year. Appreciate your call, man.
All right, see you guys.
That's Garrett Hill, assistant head coach at the Pottsville High School basketball team, and also the junior high head coach. Good insight on the coaching mismatch and the difference in the NBA Finals between the Spurs and the Miami Heat. We went a little over there, but look, it's tying a bow, like we said, on the NBA Finals. It's tying a bow on the NBA season, and we'll talk a little bit more in the next month about the free agent moves and who's going where, and then the NBA draft. But really, this is the extent of what we're talking about with the NBA.
Oh, I can't wait for the draft. I touched on it a little bit when Coach Hill was on. This is a very good draft. The top of the second round, you're going to have some first-round caliber players, top to bottom. It's going to be a really, really exciting draft. Just some of the guys at the bottom of the first round are going to be really good players.
I'm going to take a deep breath, and then I'm going to get reamed here in a minute by Jason whenever he's on the line.
I'm glad.
And we'll talk to him. It's not Jason, who is it? It's Brad. Oh God, it's even worse.
Oh, it's even more.
We're gonna talk with Brad, who the series is over. The Spurs can't win another game in this series. We're gonna talk to him.
That's your Brad, really?
Right after, yeah.
Oh,
that's my Brad's a big idiot kind of talk.
Okay.
Happy Father's Day to you. you sucker. We're going to come back right after this break. We'll talk to Brad.
Hi folks, Richard Roberts with Cogswell Motors in Russellville. You know, we've been in business since 1949. A dealership doesn't stay in business that long under the same ownership unless you're doing something right, and that's taking care of customers. We have the largest selection of new Ford, Lincoln, Mazda, and pre-owned vehicles in the River Valley. So if you want the most for your trade, the best interest rate on financing, and the best price on a new or pre-owned automobile, come to Russellville and see us. We're at 1900 East Main, or visit us on the web at cogswellmotors.com.
If you didn't count on KARK4 today this morning,
Here's what you missed.
updated news,
Police continue searching for suspects after a home intrusion overnight.
developing stories,
There's another piece of presidential history turning up here in Arkansas.
and weather and traffic on the force.
Friday night, Saturday morning will bring us our next chance rain.
Every 10 minutes.
Around the clock.
Making your day easier.
So rise and shine and count on.
Count on.
Count on KRK4 today.
RiverValleyLeader.com is the #1 local source for instant news in the River Valley, offering HD video and live streaming along with top-notch coverage of all the news and events around the area. The River Valley Leader is the only place to go for all the information you need. Check out the newest local business featured on the site, as well as police news and coverage from important meetings, along with the personal stories, all at one convenient click. Check out RiverValleyLeader.com.
Today, there are more than 20 brands of cars being sold in America. So to be noticed, Ford and Cogswell Motors have to go further than anyone thought we could. How does Ford stand out above the crowd? Not just with plug-in vehicles like the new 2013 Ford Fusion Energy that gets a projected 100 miles per gallon equivalent, but also with a line of gas vehicles equipped with the innovative EcoBoost engines combining power and efficiency, plus a full measure of technologically advanced features. We invite you to stop into Cogswell Motors today. We go further than anyone thought we could, so that you can go further too.
All right, we're back on the Sports Blitz on a Monday. Mark Freeman, Weldon Braxton, Maddie Lassiter in the Cogswell Motors studios. Need to let you know that Germany is ahead of Portugal 3-0.
That's your pick.
3-0. Yes, Germany. Yeah, that is my
That's
pick,
your
isn't
pick.
it? Yeah, I
You
forgot
didn't
about
remember.
that. Yeah, in the World Cup, they're up 3-0. That's 3-0 to the soccer guru. And the U.S. plays at 5 o'clock today against Ghana. You know, one thing I've noticed, Weldon, so far in this World Cup, and I haven't really noticed it, I just heard somebody say it, there have been no draws. So you hadn't seen any of these, oh, it's 0-0 or it's 1-1, freaking kiss your sister type stuff.
You get a partial point or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You get a point, a point. Instead, we've seen big scoring matches, and we've seen some exciting soccer for folks who pay attention to soccer.
Have we seen it, or has other people
No,
seen it?
there have been plenty of people who've seen it, the entire world. But
not
I didn't.
Although I did make sure Argentina took care of business too. That was my pick, because I said, you know what, I don't know anything about these teams. I'm gonna take the best player on the planet. We're just gonna roll with it. Argentina off to a good start. So.
All right, we're joined now on the line by Mr. Brad Caldwell, who he gets no voice. He can't talk because he was just saying that the Spurs were done after Game 2, and they won the next 3 games to win this series. I know what he was doing. I know he was after. He and Jason Kilburn, the same thing. Jason just pokes at me, man. I'm seeing look at my phone here, the text that I'm getting. He's talking about how he told us that coaching was going to be the biggest decision. It was going to come down to coaching, and I said that Pop was a better coach, but I don't think that was the biggest factor in the series.
Are you talking about the same Jason that said the home teams were going to go 7-0 in this series? Is that the same Jason you're talking about?
Man, I don't remember.
That Jason, I believe that was the Jason that said that the home team was going to win every game in this series. I'm just making sure.
All right, Brad, what's up?
Oh my gosh, it's just a great day.
Of course it is. It's a great day to be a Lakers fan,
It's
huh?
a great day to be an NBA basketball fan like I am. I mean, I am an avid NBA guy. Watch it every night, and I just love the NBA so much. And the greatest team in the history of NBA basketball with the greatest player ever in NBA history went down. And it blows my mind. I just can't believe it.
Gosh, you know what I couldn't believe? I couldn't believe how well the Lakers played this year with Kobe Bryant. That big furry.
Take LeBron off the Heat and see what they do.
Hey, LeBron James is great. He's better than Kobe. I'll just go ahead and say that now. He's also going to actually allow his team to compete by not taking all the salary cap for himself because he's a big selfish douchebag. Just saying. Hey, there ain't nothing else to say about Kobe. He's already got Shaq. He could have had more championships, but he got Shaq shipped off so he could make more money and be the guy. And then when he decided, all right, I'll play nice and get another good team around me, win some championships, and he's like, screw that. I'm gonna make $30 million a year. Don't care if we suck, and we will.
So the people in Sports Blitz know that it doesn't take a whole lot to get you riled up.
Nope.
No.
You win, Sports Blitz.
I'm just going to take the segment off. This is you two. So
man.
No,
hey, I told you,
to,
I knew this crap was over when, LeBron goes crazy and there's nothing he can do about it. 19 of 21 for the Heat in the third quarter of Game 4, and they still get beat by 20. There's nothing he could do in Game 5. If he went for 50, they lose because they only scored 70 as a team. He was outclassed by a better team because LeBron can only do so much. And we've talked it to death today, Brad, about what the Heat are going to have to do to go ahead and get back. I've tried to give the Spurs as much credit as I possibly could for being the type of team that they were, and to our credit, Weldon, I think both of us said before this playoff started, there's only one team that can beat the Miami Heat, and it's the San Antonio Spurs because of their unselfishness, because of how well they play together as a team.
Yeah, we did. And look, the way I look at this series, I know a lot of talk from us and around the country is going to be about how Miami lost. It's going to be all about the Heat, not enough on the Spurs. I understand to a degree that's unfair to the Spurs, but again, this was not a 6 or 7 game series. This was a 5-game, dare I call it a gentleman's sweep. Something is wrong with one of the teams when it goes out like it went out. And so I think it's very fair, even though it may not sound like, I think it's fair to talk about the Heat. Yes, the Spurs' legacy, 5 championships for Tim Duncan, it's sensational. We gave him all the credit in the world at the top of the show, but I think the conversation about Miami is valid, not because they lost, but how they went out. Just really ugly to watch.
All right, Brad, we got 2 minutes. Just go ahead and let us have it.
2 minutes. No, I think that Weldon is right on that. I mean, when you look at how they got beat, I mean, you definitely got to make some changes. I'm not sure exactly what the changes are going to look like, though, because, you put these 3 together and you kind of put just whatever around them. Of course, Ray Allen came in and really added something to them, but other than that, notably, there really hasn't been a whole lot of people that they put around and say, wow, that was a good pickup there. I don't know exactly what they're going to do going forward. I think they're going to have to retool in some way in their thinking. I don't know that they're going to be able to put together a big 3 and say, well, going forward, this is how we're going to do it because we did it and it was successful. And when you look at it, you got 4 NBA Finals appearances. That's pretty successful. 2 NBA championships. That's pretty successful. I would argue, though, that it probably wasn't as successful as they thought it was going to be. I think that they thought that when they got these guys together that they were going to walk through, and I say they, probably the 3 guys, that's who I'm talking about, that they were going to kind of just walk through it, and it was going to be, easy. And it wasn't easy. I mean, the 2011 season was a struggle. They ended up losing the NBA Finals. The 2012 season was a little bit less of a struggle, but they won the NBA Finals. 2013 was by far and away, 2012, was their best team. The 2014 NBA Finals, 2013-2014 team struggled again. And really, they got to the finals. I would argue that if they were in the Western Conference, they probably would not have made the finals. They just weren't as good as some of those Western Conference teams. Oklahoma City probably could have handled them. I would go as far to say as the Clippers might even have been able to beat them. I don't think that as they're tooled right now going forward, they're going to be able to do it. We were talking about this last year as they went and won the 7th game against the Spurs. We were saying this is probably the last run. Well, it turned out to be the last run.
I think there's only one team who was unselfish enough to beat Miami. Everybody else, Oklahoma City, you shut down Durant and Westbrook, it's the same thing as shutting down the big three. It's over. If you shut down for the Clippers, if you stop Chris Paul from throwing lobs and Blake Griffin from dunking on people, it's over. You've beaten them. So San Antonio, the way they were set up, they exposed Miami, and Miami got lucky last year. A lot of folks, and I have to admit it now, I thought last year that it was okay. Miami won the stinking series. You talk about Game 6, they got lucky to win the series. They won the series in 7 games. There was a whole other game. It was like the Bartman incident. People talk about Bartman because he caught a ball in foul territory that Moises Alou thought he could catch. Well, there was a whole rest of the game, and then Game 7 that the Cubs choked. I don't want to hear about it.
Right.
So the Spurs, I didn't want to hear about it. But at the end of the day, you look back now after what the Spurs did to them this year. Miami was lucky. The series ended the way it did. San Antonio was the better team.
Yeah, look, if Miami, I'll say this to Bradshaw, if Miami's role players laid down like they did, maybe those other teams entered the conversation. But if Miami, the way they looked for most of the season, I'd probably take them over the West teams. But again, I don't know who I could pick them over, looking like Chalmers, looking how he looked and so forth.
That's
but
true.
I'll say this about these big threes. Boston, their big three came together. They got one title. And to tell you the truth, they had a better fourth player in Rajon Rondo than what Miami has. Plus, I think from a chemistry standpoint, the Boston big three, their games fit together, and age and attrition still only limited them to one championship. So I think it's understandable that now it's difficult to see how they're going to work together. Guys are getting older, money's getting complicated. And again, I think the Boston big three was a better fit, and they only won one championship.
I agree with that. I think when you look at the model that the Spurs put out in this NBA Finals, you'd have to say that maybe more teams look at this and say, look, we need a team more than we need 3 really good players or 2 really good players. We need people that fit together, that their games fit together. And, that, like I said last night, and I think I quoted the numbers wrong after it was all said and done, but, Duncan averaged 15 points per game in the Finals. Kawhi Leonard averaged 17 points a game. Ginobili averaged 15, 14, whatever it was. Parker averaged 18. That is almost impossible to beat. When you've got 4 guys there that can average that, then you've got guys coming off the bench like Patty Mills, who had a great Finals. Morris Diaw, who was a glue guy that did some great things. There were all kinds of guys there that stepped up, but it was a complete and total team effort, probably one that we haven't seen in a very, very long time. But I wonder, as things go forward in the NBA, do they try to make that model? Do they try to go for a little bit more of a team game than more of an individual game? Probably not, because when you look at this, can the Spurs repeat this? I don't know. Can they come back and do it again next year? How are they going to have to retool with their age and stuff? But I thought, as far as just basketball playing, it was as beautiful as I have seen the game of basketball be played in a long time.
No, it definitely was. It was pure, and I have to give San Antonio as much credit as Tim Duncan's the best 4 of all time, in my opinion. He cemented that. Greg Popovich got these guys to buy in, got these dudes. I gave Miami a whole lot of credit, Weldon, and I know we're running out of time here, but I gave Miami a whole lot of credit for taking less money. But we talked before the show, and Tim Duncan making $10 million a year instead of what he could be making with this contract, 15 to 20.
Right.
It's highway robbery, and what it is unselfishness as a team to build around and as an organization to build around their stars, and for those stars to give up so much in the name of winning. It's incredible.
I think what the Spurs did was special. I think you have to give their organization a lot of credit from a historical standpoint. And that's why I think it'll be hard for teams to try to duplicate what San Antonio did, just because it starts with Greg Popovich. It starts with Tim Duncan. Not all their guys are unknown draft picks from the gutter. It started with having a base of a Tim Duncan, and then you build around, you develop a reputation to where 18 years later, you can now get guys to come play in your system. But the NBA, the Spurs, what they did was special because there wasn't a lot of talk about, the Jordan Bulls were such a team. They played beautiful basketball. Those Shaq and Kobe Lakers were just sharing the ball beautifully. They did a lot of that. It was underrated, but the model to me still hasn't changed. People are still going to want to get their stars. Guys are want to get paid and not want to take less money to be role players for the most part. That's why I think it's even more special what San Antonio did, because I don't see the mold in the NBA changing because of egos and greed and star power and things of that nature.
Well, Brad, I don't think you can say, early on these guys need to make they need to make sure that they're set up financially. They don't want to, take the veteran minimum immediately. Tim Duncan has made. I'm not going to cry for him because he's made a lot of money in his career, so he can afford to do that. But I do want to see more teams who will sacrifice for the good of the team to understand that, okay, if I take a little less money here after I've made some pretty good money in my career, that I can win. There does have to be a balance. I agree with what you're saying, and I do think that there are going to be a lot of folks that won't do that.
I mean, and really, Brad, won't shut you out, but I think that we weren't talking about beautiful team basketball with Michael Jordan and company were ruling things. Like, that way to win isn't not out of style. I know we're the prisoners of the Spurs moment, but I don't think it's all about the 10-man beautiful rotation, everybody's equal kind of thing. This league, the Michael Jordans of the world, there was something to be said for that back then. We marveled over and they won championships. And so that's why I'm talking about the molds of still being the stars with very good role players. I don't think that's going anywhere because the Spurs play beautiful basketball.
Well, I think the Michael Jordan Bulls, you could say, were a pretty good team, but they had a guy that they could go to at all times, that if they needed something to happen, he could make it happen. And, of course, early on in Jordan's career, it wasn't necessarily that way. It was more of, let's play it through me and let's see what I can do, and then we'll let everybody else do what they can do. But I think as Jordan's career kind of went along, it became more of a team game, and then what happened was he was able to lean on his teammates more, and he did that, and because of that, they won. But it was more of a team game, in my opinion, with them, with a guy that you could say, instead of having a center that you could throw it down into in the post, you had a shooting guard that you could do something with. You could make something happen with at all times, and I think that was the difference.
Yeah, I would say though the Spurs didn't even have a Michael Jordan this year though. Like they were almost not. Tony Parker is probably the best player to me, but it's such a flatline system of the Spurs of just so communal. Like even the Jordan Bulls were great teams. We haven't seen anything this flat with San Antonio. That's what I'm pointing out.
Yeah, I agree with you there 100%. I mean, you probably haven't seen something like this in who knows how long. I mean, it's been that long that you can't even really think about the times that it was just an ultimate team. I guess maybe the Showtime Lakers, because they didn't have a team, or they didn't have a guy that just absolutely dominated in scoring. Now, Magic Johnson dominated the ball, but the way he got people involved, and he made them better, and he made it easy for them to score, but they didn't have a 30-point per game scorer on that team, so maybe you have to go back that far.
No, you probably do. I mean, it was a good NBA Finals. We've run out of time, so we can't dig any deeper into this. But it was a good NBA Finals. It was a great win for the San Antonio Spurs. A disappointing loss for my Miami Heat. And we'll talk on Wednesday about whether it's okay. I want to look at another poll question for Wednesday. Whether it's okay to follow individual players or whether that makes you a bandwagon guy. Because I've seen people like, oh, I'm a Miami Heat fan, and I'm just like, really? You're just going for the better team.
Yeah.
You don't have I had a dog in the fight. I was a Cleveland Cavaliers fan with LeBron James.
Yeah.
If anybody deserves, and I was talking with Charlie Spakes, he's a Dolphins fan. I'm a Cowboys fan in football. I think we deserve, and I've watched the Miami Heat get stroked, or the Cleveland Cavaliers get stroked by the Spurs in 2007, and I'm having to deal with all the crap because I'm a LeBron James fan and watching his team, the Cleveland Cavaliers. I feel like I'd freaking deserve to get to follow LeBron wherever he goes. I don't care if he goes to the freaking NBA All-Stars and that's the team that he's on. I'm rooting for them, and forget everybody who says it's bandwagon. I want to debate that.
Excuse me, Mark Windhorse. Excuse me.
I want to debate that on Wednesday. Brad, give us a call back on Wednesday, all right?
All right. See y'all later.
All right, take it easy. Brad Caldwell, always bringing us some deep stuff.
Bringing the noise.
That's exactly what that was. Want to give me crap for everything, so it's all right, though. I can take it.
You took some Lakers shots.
I got broad shoulders. Hey, welcome to my world. I have to deal with this on a daily basis, so no, it's good stuff. All right, we'll be back on Wednesday. We will debate that. We'll look at our poll question, too. What are you going to pay attention to for the rest of the summer? I saw some World Cup. I saw some bike racing. I saw NBA offseason from Corey Williams, and then college football. I know that there's some stuff that we'll pay attention to. Also, we'll look at the Athlon Sports All-SEC team. 8 Razorbacks made varying teams, first through fourth, I think, Athlon Sports team. So we'll look at those and much more on Wednesday. We had a lot of NBA today. We don't necessarily apologize for that, but we tied a bow on the season. We'll be back on Wednesday. For Weldon and Maddie, I'm Mark saying so long. See you at 11 o'clock on Wednesday.